Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark, Alan Rough, Tam Cowan, Darren Jackson with me, Peter Martin. Delighted to have your company. Don't forget, you can follow us, you can share our stream, and if you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel. Hit the red button. We'd love to have you as part of the football family. Sun is shining. The snow has gone in the central area. Maybe still snowy where you are, especially if you're in Texas at -22. But nevertheless, if you're watching the programme, we're delighted to have you on board with us. Lots to talk about. And interestingly enough, Roughie, sometimes, and I'm listening to Tam and Darren and all of us still in this lockdown, one of our one-to-one guests tomorrow, we had Andy Mitchell last week with a great story to tell, but one of our one-to-one guests for tomorrow's programme, Roughie, is Kevin Twaddle. Used to play for St Johnstone, St Mirren, Motherwell for 3 years, and of course Hearts as well. And it's amazing the story of how people deal in different ways with lockdown, Roughie. It's been an incredible year. Hard to believe it's heading towards the year when we're shut in our homes.
Yeah, and even us four, I'm sure we've all been affected differently. And you've just got to handle it and get on with it. But you're right, there's a lot of people out there who must be really, really struggling. And I feel really sorry for them sometimes. When I drive, if I'm outside going up the supermarket or something, and I see a lot of people who just aren't coming out of their houses. And I feel really sorry for them, to be locked up for that long. It must be absolutely horrendous. But no, we've had Kevin on before, and he was very good, telling us all the personal things that go on. And I think the thing about it is people don't realise that footballers have got lives away from kicking a ball, and a lot of things happen in your life. And he was very honest when he was on the show a couple of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Tam, the one thing I didn't know, and I think he would probably have been on your show on radio as well, Kevin in 2004, I think, released a book on life on the line and how he came back from a gambling addiction. And, I've known Kevin for quite a while as well. Probably Darren knows him too from our time living in Edinburgh. Might have blew £1 million in gambling, and brought all sorts of carnage to his family. But the story on tomorrow's programme, Tam, is again equally as sad and heartbreaking, because there's a further darkness that you go on over and above that Kevin explains beyond gambling, which is just basically trying to find yourself, to be honest, not to let yourself go off the edge of the cliff in lockdown as well.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that, Peter, because certainly the first part of his story was absolutely harrowing. You're right, we did have him on the radio. It was back when he released that book, and at that point it was all the incredible, really incredible stories about his gambling exploits, and just how low he'd found himself financially. And I was obviously able to kind of echo his thoughts, Peter, because as I reminded Kevin, the amount of times that when he was playing for Motherwell that I'd put £20 on him to be first goal scorer, and lost an absolute fortune. His stories were really good. Big Kevin was able to laugh at himself as well, and he was very lucky the first time round to get a lot of help, both professionally and of course from his family. So yes, he's a very, very nice big guy, and he actually, all joking aside, he wasn't a bad player in his day, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, Tam. I mean, Darren, I did mention to him, because he does like a bit of a laugh as well. I mentioned to him, how could you have lost £1 million in football, for God's sake? I said, I must have nutmegged you about 30 times. And his mates were all caning him as well. His mates were all caning him, saying, where did you get £1 million for signing for St Johnstone and Motherwell? But it's just, in darkness, you find that humour. And he can laugh at it, but the story was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think you can laugh at it now, Peter, and you can laugh at things like what Tam said about putting a bet on you, but it's probably hard. I'm not a gambler myself, and it's hard for someone like people who don't gamble to just try and get your head round it. You just want to keep putting money on, but I totally they get caught up in it, and they just can't dig themselves out of it, and they just think, I'll get that's going to win, and it's very, very hard, Peter, but fair play to him. writing a book and being honest. And I hope he has helped himself, but I would imagine he's probably helped others, Peter. But he is, I mean,
Yeah,
good friends with Keith Wright. He's a good laugh, and he was a good player. He was a good player in his time. He did really well at the clubs he was at, and but he is. You can see he's got quite an infectious personality. When he starts talking to you, he's bubbly and all that. But he's obviously he's been in dark places. But fair play to him, and he deserves credit.
Yeah, well worth it tomorrow when it comes out, because his family deserve a medal, and the stories that he was telling us were inspiring, harrowing, and of course, hopefully uplifting as he continues his journey day by day, not from gambling addiction, I have to say. He caught me on the hop with the story. You can hear it tomorrow. Lots to talk about today.
Peter, a gambling, yeah. Peter, a wee quick gambling story that will always put a smile on anyone's face. True story as well. And you'll even know the bookies in question. It was the Ladbroke shop at Motherwell Cross, just next to the Horseshoe Bar.
Yes.
And, I was in there many moons ago now, maybe 15, 20 years ago. I was in there with one of my mates that had been drinking way in the Motherwell Town Snooker Club, Peter, and I had won a few quid, stuck it in my back pocket, and we went back round for a drink. And as we were there, we were greeted by my mate's wife. She was sitting having a drink. I says, right, drinks are on me, I've done no bad. Into my back pocket, the £100 that I had won, missing, not there. I said, I says I must have dropped that. When I thought I'd put it in my back pocket, the bookies, it must have fell out and landed in the flare. My mate's wife, lovely bit of innocence, she said, away run back round, Tam, and see if somebody's haunted it in.
Well, I have to say, Tam, it's good that you're telling that story, because Roughie, Tam mentioned all those kind of places that we all used to hang about. Strangely enough, I had a mate who loved gambling. I mean, he loved going to the dogs and gambling as well. Roughie, there used to be one, a dog track near Motherwell, and he always said to me and my pal and him, three of us hung about together, if I win today or I win any time, I take you all out. And over maybe a 7 or 8 year period, Roughie, I think we managed to take him out 6 years and possibly 363 days. And for the 3 days that he won, we had a right good skullful. But it was the 6 years and the 363 days that killed us, Roughie. It's not a good thing to do. I'm not a gambling man, thank God.
No, as Tam says, if somebody casually says to you, I've got a tip for a horse, you just don't want to miss it. Unfortunately, they don't come up all the time.
Miss it, trust me, miss it, Peter. Just another retail. I know your script's out the window of the day, it doesn't matter, but years ago, and I had Big John McCririck on the old telly show with us, right? Same one that Darren and Roughie had done, and John McCririck was on, and I said to him before we went in to record the show, I says, John, just to give you a wee heads up, when we go in and start doing the show, I'm going to whip out the Evening Times, which has got the next day, that would have been the Tuesday's racing in it. I'm going to ask you in front of the audience, in front of the cameras, if you can pick as a horse. If you could pick one out, that would be great, right? He said, yeah, no bother, leave it to me, So anyway, we goes in and we start recording the show. I whips out the paper in front of the audience. I says, right, John, can you give us a wee tip for the race tomorrow? And he just looked at the camera and he said, I wish the 140 race at Lingfield will be won by I Wish. That was his tip, right? Never thought anything else of it, Peter. I goes back into the green room. There was another person who I won't name, who was our other guest that night. And after the show, this other guest said to me, are you going to bet that horse, Tam? And I said, what horse? He said, the one that McCririck gave you. I said, well, that was just a bit of fun. He said, no, it wasn't. He said, see, when you went in today, the start of the programme, McCririck was never off the phone. And think of all the contacts he'll have with trainers, owners, jockeys, everything. He was wanting to get that right, because as much as he loved portraying himself as a big, loud, kind of ball bag guy, he wanted to pick you a winner. And I went, this is very interesting. I says to the other gentleman, who I won't name for reasons that will become apparent, I said, are you going to back it? He said, aye. Cut a long story short, the next day I'm sitting in the house in Motherwell, and it's 1:30, and it just flashes into my head, oh, that horse is going at 1:40. I wish, the 1:40 at Lingfield. I tanned it for my mum's old house, Peter, right up to Mary Street, next door to the Burnsies Tavern, the wee bookies that was there, and I put my bet on, a fairly sensible bet. I wish it went off the 72-second favourite, a 7-runner race, and it was last, stone cold last, right? I was pig sick, right? 1 week later, I'm at Hamilton Races. As I walk into Hamilton Races, the first guy that I see standing at the bottom of the steps at the stand is the other gentleman who'd been on the show that day, looking rather ashen-faced, might I add, right? And he just looked at me like that. And I says, how you doing? And I walked to her, and he just says to me, did you bet that? I said, aye, I bet it. I bet a stinker. How much did you have in it? And I wasn't going to lie to him. I had 20 quid, which I thought was rather cavalier, right? I says, did you bet it? He says, aye. I said, how much? 10 grand.
Oh, no.
10 grand. 10 grand with a variety of bookies. You got the bet on. So the moral of that story, and in fact, I remember telling Big Kevin Twaddle the exact same story. Never ever, Roughie Senior, never ever listen to a tip. Never. If John McCririck and the assortment of owners and trainers and jockeys that he'd phoned up couldn't get as a winner, who the hell's going to give you a tip?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And can I just clarify for the benefit of everybody who may be listening from a different country other than Scotland, the word ball bag can be a term of endearment as well. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 words, Roughie, that have a different meaning along the way, but in Scotland we use it, and depending on the intonation, it can be he's an all right guy. That's all I'm saying to you.
What's that other word? What's that other word, Peter? It can also be a term of endearment. You're a good guy.
You've already had the betting story. My betting story's too long, but Peter will know that it cost me a Scotland cap. But it's for another day.
Oh, Roughie, that is such a good story.
Take too long.
Unbelievable. Don't tell it.
Take too long.
Apart from anything else, just before we go into the script, Tam, one of my journalists who works for our company obviously doesn't like to skip along past any main topic, and she's just said to me, make sure you get Tam, once he's done telling stories, to give us his view on that scalping from Hamilton Accies.
That's why I'm talking about anything rather than football today. For horse racing, I'll do the rugby if you want, the Scotland-Wales game. Oh, we were unlucky, we blew it. Only 1 point in it. It was bad. No, if you want, you know what, Peter, I'm going to take a positive out of it. Darren will have spotted this himself, and did any observers of Scottish football. We've been a bit too prone in the past. We've got an absolutely cracking media team at Motherwell who I never end saluting. But we've been too prone in the past of the minute we get a heavy defeat or just any sort of defeat, the players then do one of these kind of warrior videos that go on social media about how we're going to bounce back and we go again and all this patter, you know. There was no such language for Graham Alexander this week after what was a 4-1 thumping at home by Hamilton Accies. And to repeat, it was the first time in history that Hamilton Accies have beaten Motherwell 3 games on the bounce. That's never ever happened before. It's a local derby. A lot of Motherwell fans still insist that the real local derby for us is Airdrie, because that's the one they used to always be the battles at and the real bad feeling and everything. Hamilton are almost our friendly cousins. But it was a thumping. But Graham Alexander came out and he says, I'm not going to make any excuses and I'm not going to start making any promises about the next game and saying how we'll bounce back. Hard work is the key to everything now, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we're going to hear from Brian Rice, not just to rub salt in your wounds, Tam, but he's on. We've also got Neil Lennon, and we will be discussing the situation with the Rangers investigation into players who were allegedly at a party and administered with a fine for being at a gathering. We'll talk about that. You can give us your thoughts on that as well. Celtic Aberdeen takes place tomorrow. Neil Lennon coming under increasing pressure. Again, fans wondering when this review is going to take place, but Neil Lennon came out and said today he's always under review.
That's natural every season, regardless of where the club announced the review in December, you're always being reviewed. I do agree with them that, the performances or the on-field results have been disappointing. That's something we're looking to rectify between now and the end of the season. In terms of the finances, we're not immune to, the difficulties of the pandemic, but we're still quite strong financially and quite robust. Well, we just sold a player for 12 million. So, this is a well-run club. And like I say, every club in the UK and around the world has suffered during this pandemic. We're not immune to it, but I think we're, still in a healthy position compared to a lot of other clubs.
Well, on that point, Darren, Neil, I think, mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of stuck in my head about the fact that he thought there was a clamour for people to get him the sack. In our industry, we've got to try and call it as we see it based on results and try and keep it as objective as we can. So if the Celtic fans who are still so angry that he's in place and are also angry at the indecision on the board, he's here now, and I get the feeling from that the board are saying, right, he's here and he's here to the end of the season, so get on with it. So, if anything, I think people should, not necessarily the fans, but people should just accept it. While the board haven't been transparent, the fact that they haven't got rid of Neil a month, possibly more than a month ago, tells you that they're going all the way to the end of the season with him.
It does. It looks like it, Peter. Now, I can understand Neil saying he's under review all the time. But a Celtic manager has never gone through this run for the past, obviously, 9 years. So they've not really been under review because they've been winning. But I think the biggest thing, and everybody's going to jump on it, Peter, especially the press, when you set a date, we'll give you a review at the end of January. Everybody's waiting at the end of January. When nothing comes, questions get asked. And listen, Neil, they've won the last few games, but no one is interested in that. They just want to know what Neil, the review, and are you still going to be in place? And Neil's going to be in place until he's told otherwise. He's just going to manage away and try and get results and try and finish the season as he can. And he's possibly hoping that if they can go on a good run to the end of the season, that Celtic might keep him. It looks very unlikely, but as any manager would do, he's just carrying on with his job.
Yeah, the big dilemma, of course, with this, Roughie, is the fact that you'll get to April. You've had the chairman, Ian Bankier, yesterday with those financial results saying the next 6 months is going to be really, really tough, even worse because of the lack of European football, the lack of supporters in the stadium. And April, as you know, is the time when they have to do something to try and influence supporters to buy season tickets, whether they are virtual or otherwise.
Yeah, I think the virtual one's a bigger one, Peter. That I'm sure money's tight just now. And I think people, okay, they're going to watch the games on the telly, but it's not the same as being at the game. So that'll be a hard one to convince people. I agree with you that, people want to know what's happening, but I think Darren will tell you there would have been a review in-house, a big review. There have been meetings all over the place. All right, they've not told the fans, but it's up to the fans to decide, what they do with this one. And I mean, I know you're saying that people, if I was a season ticket holder and I didn't like Neil Lennon there, would I give up my season ticket and let somebody else get my season ticket? It's a hard one for me to get my head around that one, because if you'd given up your season ticket, there'll be somebody else will take it. And at the end of the day, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it once if a new manager comes in.
Roughie, you automatically say that as if that's a given. I will give you Ronnie Dyla, where basically on the top tier of Celtic Park, they had to put flags on the top tier because nobody wanted to come and watch Celtic with Ronnie Dyla as manager. So it's not necessarily a given. I'm amazed that you can brush over the fact that Tam, quite simply, by not saying anything, it's actually angering people more. There's a real silence about it that we're going to talk about with other clubs who are deciding now to try and say nothing and just ride the storm out. Hopefully, not that it'll go away, but they can ride it out.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, Peter, and certainly it seems to have calmed down a wee bit recently, maybe because the passing of time, maybe because Celtic, albeit it's too little too late, getting a wee bit of form back and playing some decent stuff and scoring a few goals. But, I think it would maybe be better all round if the board came out and says, you know what, Neil Lennon, ultimately, no matter what you think about him, he was the manager who clinched the historical quadruple treble. So we're not going to sack him, we're not going to punt him, and he's going to be here at the end of the season. And then we'll see what happens then. But then, of course, there's a flip argument that Celtic fans will say right away, particularly Celtic fans who don't think Neil Lennon should be there, that, for them to try and tussle with Rangers again next season, as it's looking, obviously, as Rangers are going to be champs, they'll be saying, well, wait a minute, we can't wait to get a manager in at the last minute. We should be getting the guy in the new, giving him the end of the season, giving him a full close season before next season resumes. So it's a strange thing, and I must admit, Peter, as a Motherwell fan a day, it's hard not to have a slight smile on my face when I keep hearing about Celtic fans who tell us that they're the greatest fans in the world and how they'll walk a million miles for one of their goals. A few weeks after a quadruple treble, they're talking about no going back or no renewing their season ticket. Utterly baffling.
Yeah, absolutely. On that point, of course, there are other players, never mind the manager, who could be heading out the door. There's a real feeling that there's going to be an exodus, a flushing out of players going back from their loan deals, other players who will be deemed not good enough, and, of course, the sellable assets. What about the likes of Odsonne Edouard and Christopher Ajer? Neil Lennon saying they're not too forthcoming on what their plans are.
You could look at both scenarios. We have spoken to both their representatives about sitting down and discussing new contracts, but that's not been forthcoming at the minute. So we'll have to wait and see what the summer brings. But what we do have is we have a team full of assets, and like I say, we just sold one there for a huge amount of money. I'm not sure his current form has any bearing on how much he'll go for, because he's a top class player, as everybody knows. But it's great for us that he is in great form, and I don't want to talk about him leaving. He'd much rather stay here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, an interesting one there. It's going to be very interesting to see exactly whether Edouard, Ajer and a number of other players will be there for the new season. I mean, let's not forget, he talked about a £12 million sale of Frimpong, but Ncham also went out the door and took a lot of money off the wage bill when he went to Marseille as well. So, there will be a list there, but it's Celtic against Aberdeen. I think they've got to try and just put that to the back of their minds and get on with this game in hand, Darren, which could reduce the gap to 15 points.
Yes, Eric's obviously under a lot of pressure playing, and obviously coming to Celtic Park. His record in Glasgow is not too great, but he needs a win. But Celtic they've had a good win at the week. I thought it was a great win at the weekend, because St Johnstone are doing really well just now, playing good football. They're always solid at home. The pitch obviously wasn't the best. You go 1-0 down. So as a manager, Neil's looking at it and going 1-0 down. Is there fight in this team? And they show that there is fight in this team. There's still a lot of obviously good players and people that are up for a fight. And it was a fantastic result. And I fancy them tomorrow night. They'll get a result tomorrow night.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, Tam, I mean, we're talking about, silence and the lack of communication, transparency and the way ahead for Celtic. What about Aberdeen? What did you make of Dave Cormack saying, 0-0 against St Mirren, but off the back of that, we're not going to have that Q&A?
Yeah, well, I had a wee wry grin on my face, shall we say, Peter, because a few weeks ago, Dave Cormack accused yours truly, and indeed my radio mucker Stuart Cosgrove, of not asking Professor Jason Leach any hard questions. Now, quite frankly, off the ball isn't it Panorama or Newsnight? We're not really meant to ask hard questions. We're just meant to have a laugh and a joke and a carry on. But he did still accuse us of that. And then he said, you should have Professor Jason Leach on Sports Sound, perhaps with Richard Gordon or Tom English, and they can ask him some hard questions. And then you roll on a few weeks, and Dave Cormack effectively chickens out of having a Q&A where hard questions would have been put to his manager from the fans about the club. So I allowed myself a wee chuckle about that. But even though it now seems that Celtic are toast, and you could look at Celtic Aberdeen, once a huge fixture, Peter, is being relatively meaningless. There's the intriguing part in that game, of course, that Aberdeen, if they don't score a goal within the first 72 minutes, they shatter the club record for the longest the Dons have ever gone on league duty without scoring a goal. They're currently at 463 minutes after drawing a blank the last 5 games. So if they don't hit the back of Celtic's net before the 72nd minute, then it doesn't look very good at all up in the northeast.
Yeah, absolutely. And, because Roughie and I know you from the after dinner circuit, when you were going through that whole statistical minefield there, as soon as you started to say they shatter, my bottle crashed. I thought, is he really going for the jugular here? And I just want to know, how many faces do you have? You've had 2 wry smiles already on this programme.
Well, yeah, you can't be.
You've scalped the Celtic fans and you've scalped the Aberdeen chairman, but he does have a point, Ruffy, because quite simply, you can't have it both ways. I mean, he who laughs last laughs the longest. I mean, he can't openly criticise and then suddenly don't want to answer the questions that the Aberdeen fans, who rightly or wrongly, again, I mean, it's the Neil Lennon scenario. It's people now baying for blood for Derek McInnes because, quite simply, results aren't good enough.
Oh, you're right. But when you start involving the fans and you want to communicate with them, and then you back it, I think it's always good to be. If you're going to do it, something you go ahead with. You just can't back out of it because you're going to look stupid. And it's. I think sometimes doing a question and answer with fans, it gets things out in the open. Sure, you're going to get a lot of grief, but you've got to deal with it. If he was the one that was fronting it up, then it looks really bad for him to cancel it. But I think he's an American owner, and I think he has different views, and I think he thinks he can override most things and come out. Some of the ideas he was coming out with were absolutely absurd of how Scottish football should move forward. So he's one of these guys who likes it his way, I think, but I don't think he's going to get it all the time.
Yeah. So Derek has to do something with this result tomorrow night. Darren, what were you going to say?
And it doesn't look good when you've shipped 3 strikers out. Well, you've got money for one of them, and the other couple have gone, and you bring another 3. And the wee boy Bruce Anderson is scoring for Hamilton. Sorry to bring that up, Tam. And I was very, very impressed with him when I went to watch Hamilton. And because I've not seen a lot of him, he's not played too many games for Aberdeen. I was very surprised on how good he was for his size, holding the ball and linking the play. And obviously, he set up a great goal on Saturday, and he scored one. So when that happens as well, it puts a wee bit more pressure on the manager, saying, well, why did he not get a chance? Why is he not playing for Aberdeen?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's always the case. But nevertheless, Roughie, we'll give our prediction on the game tomorrow. But another issue, which is, again, down to the fact that, I mean, I'm waiting to see if an investigation from Rangers will reveal the names of the players, Tam, with regards to the allegations of players being involved in a party. Nicola Sturgeon has made her feelings clear on it. Not only Rangers, but lots of clubs have to get their house in order in football to make sure that they're aware of the rules. We've talked about it ad nauseum about what the rules are. So if there are Rangers players there, I wonder, I get the feeling, that reports today, suggest that maybe Rangers are going to conduct this investigation and not name anyone. I would be gobsmacked by that, because I think the SFA and the SPFL might want to know who was involved.
Well, can I just be fair to start with here, Peter, and say that I don't think it is indeed fair pointing at Rangers here, pointing at these guys' employer, because we've had various stories that have popped up in the news in recent weeks. We've all seen them in the tea time bulletins of the police right round Scotland battering their way into doors where people have been having parties or sitting with their pals having a bevy, etc., etc. And when any of these people get caught or get fined, they don't mention where they work, who they work for, who their employer is. So I think it's a tad unfair to level anything against Rangers. And I thought exactly the same with us when we had instances with Aberdeen players going out in the Randan way back at the start of the season, with Bolingoli flying away to meet his girlfriend or whatever he was doing. I think it's a wee bit unfair on our clubs, but the bottom line is that's the price we may have to pay, and that's the responsibility these guys might have to accept, because virtue of the fact that they are footballers, it is football that was given these special privileges way back when, and it is football which, according to the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, is on the yellow card. And she could just wave that red card anytime. She may have done it. She may have been tempted to have done it the other day when this story broke. But I just think it absolutely beggars belief, because it's everybody now knows the rules. Everybody knows about the protocols and the regulations. And I think it was best summed up with Stuart McCall, former Rangers player and manager, of course, when he just described the players, and we don't know who they are, he just described them as the thickest people on the planet, because everybody knows how to behave now. It's absolutely farcical, and it is already embarrassed Rangers, and it's clearly embarrassed their fans. I always find it refreshing, Peter, when you see fans, your own fans at a club, having a go at your own players when you know they've done wrong. And the Rangers fans have absolutely hammered these boys, whoever they may be.
Yeah, Roughie, I disagree with Tam on this point, because quite simply, whether it's Celtic, whether it's Rangers players, Motherwell, Hamilton, wherever, they are in a privileged position. They do know the rules. They do get special dispensation that mere mortals don't get. And if they break them, then, they have to be highlighted. They have to be punished. And don't get me started on the fact that they have been punished. George Edmondson and Jordan Jones may not have actually looked upon it. There may not have been an immediate punishment for them, but they're out the door, Roughie. And a lot of the players get a special dispensation of elite sport that, a lot of people over the last year have not got, Roughie, in their job. They've had to actually stay in their houses. Some haven't been able to work. Some have lost their jobs. But football, because of it's the nation's favourite sport, has been allowed this elite sport special dispensation.
Yeah, you're right. You've used the right word. It's elite sportsmen, to allow them to travel to places that nobody else can travel to for games and do things that other people can't do. And I'm sure if you ask the Rangers manager, he'll be absolutely fuming. But I would think if Rangers aren't going to disclose who they are, I'm sure there'll be a good investigative journalist out there as we speak. We'll find out who the players are. So I think it would be better for Rangers to come out and deal with it. I'm sure they will deal with it. They'll obviously. But what leads me to believe that because the names haven't come out, I think we're talking now about some high-profile players. Before it was okay because it was Jones and Edmondson who they did want out the door. It'll be interesting how Rangers react to this one. If it is, I'm not saying it is, I'm saying if it is a high-profile player, how they act towards them, considering what they did with the two players that you've talked about and thrown them out the door. So I think the next couple of days, I think more and more will come out as it usually does.
On that point, Jim Goodwin has said players breaching rules must face heavy sanctions. He goes on to say that ignorance is no longer an excuse for putting the game at jeopardy, Darren. And as Tam mentioned there, everybody knows the rules. And I would say that the majority of footballers are absolutely clued up to it. But there are a small band of people who think they're invisible, think they can get away with anything, and think because they are so high profile that there'll be no consequences.
So it's just mad, Peter, what's happened. It's you just can't kind of comprehend that they can whoever it is, they can still go out and just think they can still have a party after all what's happened. Now, I don't think they should get any more sanctions on them than the boys that have done before, but I'm sure Rangers Football Club will absolutely hammer them. And Peter, players, Edmondson and Jordan Jones will know who it was. So if the players don't get hammered, what are they going to say about it? So I think it'll have to come out. Names will probably have to come out for that reason. But I think Tam's right. Can you hammer Rangers as a club? No, because they're adults, Peter. They want to be treated as adults. When they're away, they can't be babysitted. When they're away from the club, the club can't know where they are every single minute of the day, and they shouldn't have to worry what they're doing every single minute of the day. They get treated as adults, and they're expected with the responsibilities of being Rangers football players. And as I say, whoever it is, I just think it's absolute madness what they've done. And Stuart McCall totally hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, there's lots of people giving us their thoughts on it, either from an impartial, neutral point of view, or indeed some people not quite getting the balance of this one. But nevertheless, it's a subject that offers so many people their opinion on it, and whether there's a punishment or a consequence of it, only time will tell. We await to see whether the SFA and the SPFL want to know exactly the names, whether there's penalties, or whether indeed Rangers actually enforce their own penalties on this for players who know the rules. St Mirren versus
Hamilton.
Peter,
sorry, somebody just while you were chatting here texted me who they believe 4 names to be, but I'll save it when us lot are out at your bit of the night having a wee drink. I'll tell you then, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I might have burnt the cake, to be honest with you. So it's one of those situations. I mean, to be fair, interestingly enough, Tam, broadcasters, we're lucky. In my role, I get to go to games, which fans would absolutely love to do. We're very lucky.
And you know
because
what?
of the
Everybody's very lucky, and you're obviously doing it in this format now. You don't have any choice. Can you imagine we'd had the coronavirus and we'd had lockdown, 2 lockdowns now, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when you didn't have everything at your disposal that you have now? A lot of life has been able to carry on. Folk could never complain. Phil Dupitis, former, never mind the Buzzcocks team panelist and comedian, he actually was talking in his social media the other night about somebody had brought out a podcast a few years ago on the subject of boredom, and he asked a very pertinent question: is it possible for anybody now in this day and age to actually be bored when you think with everything that you've got at your fingertips? You know, you've got all the movie channels, you've got Netflix, you've got Sky, you've got Amazon, you've got laptops, you've got iPhones, you've got YouTube, you've got absolutely everything. So we should all kind of just get a grip again here and think that, you know what, staying at home until this bloody thing's over, it's not actually as hard as it would have been once upon a time.
Yeah, lots of people will give us their opinion on that, but it's certainly a subject where it can get red hot, especially in football. But St Mirren against Hamilton was a game I was going to talk about as well, guys, because Jim Goodwin has managed to get himself a new deal, and he's got aspirations to get St Mirren into the top 6 and beyond that. I thought he was very honest, Darren, saying, you know, beyond that, if he keeps St Mirren high up the league, he might get a bigger job himself.
I think that's only natural, Peter, and that's not being disrespectful to St Mirren. He was a brilliant player for them, and he's becoming a good top manager for them. He's managed to get rid of the players that he didn't want, didn't think probably were going to take them to where he wanted to be. He's recruited well, and as I say, it's like any player, Peter. You're at a provisional club, but any club. I mean, we've spoken about players leaving Celtic because they want to advance their career, what they think advancing their career is. But there's no doubt people, if Jim keeps going to the end of the season, then starts the season well, people will look at him because he is having success, and that attracts other clubs to look at you.
Yeah, and if Tam has mentioned the fact that he remembers what Dave Cormack said to him, then spare a thought for Brian Rice, who clearly has taken on the role of Captain Mannering, and he's writing down right now all the people who have absolutely leathered him over the last few months, calling for his head and giving him pelters. And Brian Rice, ahead of this game, mentioned the fact that he will have his day with them.
I just use all the criticism that I get and the derogatory things that get said about you. I just store that up because one day it will get used back. You know, me personally. That's how I do it. You know, I don't forget anything. I don't forget him that crosses me. I keep it in my head because one day my turn will come. And I use my players saying, well, we'll get criticised, rightly so, at the right times. We'll get praise at the right times. But we know what we need to do. That's the most important thing. We know where we want to be and we're trying to get there.
Well, I don't know if that augurs well for you, Roughie. I mean, you could just be standing in the middle of a nightclub one night and Ricey just comes up and belts you in the jaw. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, we're all treading on eggshells now.
I can reassure you, I'm good mates with Ricey. We go way back to our Hibs day, and I have already told him that Ross County for me this year, so he knows exactly where he is with me.
Yeah,
and me and Brian Rice go back years as well. Years ago, he was on the telly with me one night alongside John McCreary. No, it wasn't him.
Bad. I know it wasn't him.
It wasn't him. But you know what, Peter? Genuinely, I'm fine with Brian Rice because unlike so many other folk, however remotely involved with football and the media, just because Hamilton, I mean, you'll be the same, Peter. We've all Lanarkshire boys. You got a wee bit of a soft spot for Hamilton. I certainly have never written him off in recent years. I was born in Hamilton, for goodness sake. And, you know, if that terrible day had come, which I thought was on the horizon when Motherwell went into administration, if the padlock had actually gone on the gates at Fir Park and we were finished, I remember thinking at the time that, I would have gone and supported Hamilton, who would have been my next local club after Motherwell. So, Brian Rice could go through everything I have ever said about Hamilton. In fact, even at the top of the show there, I did grudgingly compliment them because they were actually pretty decent. A lot of the story for Fir Park on Saturday was about us getting a man sent off, Stephen O'Donnell, early doors, and you know, losing 3 goals in a crazy half-hour spell first half. But no, Hamilton were decent, and I've got a feeling they'll defy the odds again and stay up once more. Yeah, some people would suggest it's
that's
quite
Tam secure now.
Well, that's him fine.
Tam doesn't have to worry about it. What about you, Dan?
He's not. Well,
listen, I was at St Mirren with Chipper, and I'll tell you, Peter.
Chipper.
Hamilton will never get a better coach as a manager than Brian Rice. I mean, his enthusiasm is incredible for football. He's never, every single night of the week, he's at games, he's down south. I've been at a few games and he'll come up and we'll sit and chat. He said, I was down at Burnley on Tuesday night and I was up at Ross County on Wednesday night and all that. His enthusiasm, and he knows there's going to be games during the season that they're going to maybe lose 4, 5 or 6. He understands that because it's Hamilton, but he's never downbeat. He's always positive about his players, and I can imagine him in the dressing room after maybe a heavy defeat, giving them the good points, what came out of the game. Yes, they'll work on. I think they're totally well drilled in everything they do. I mean, you see the Rangers game, and Stephen Gerrard was right. Rangers were probably off it that day, but you're only as good as you're allowed to play. And Hamilton defended really well that day, and I think he's got a bunch of players there that are not only fighting for their Premier League lives, but they're fighting for a manager who believes in them.
Yeah, you three are just awful, by the way, honestly. I mean, you've just dug yourselves out of a hole. It's unbelievable. And of course, I think the most important thing, some people don't like the fact that, you know, Chipper has just mentioned there that he's got a list of things that he's remembering. And some people think that's petty. I'm going to go back to the Daily Record from 1998 when I think one of the columnists in there, Roughie, gave me pelters for not supporting the team that was closest to me where I was born. And now that somebody has revealed they were born in Hamilton, I just wonder how you're going to squirm your way out of this. Let's look at that Daily Record column from 1998. You've given me pelters. Why are you not a Hamilton Accies fan?
And just one, Peter, it's no longer there, but just one for your Facebookers to make up their own comments about the place that I was actually born in Hamilton was called Beckford Lodge. So I was born in a lodge.
That is fantastic. Thankfully, Roughie, I was born in Bellshill Maternity, which was a stone's throw, Tam, from Celtic Park. How lucky was that, eh? Anyway, so talk about bad behaviour. Darren, it's everywhere. I don't know whether it's because we're all in isolation that individuals are becoming more angry, Darren, but I don't know who actually started the motion on social media. Let's all go down to Ipswich's training ground and set fire to it because we want rid of the manager. Has the world gone mad?
Peter, seeing football now, I'm quite old school, and they just follow traits. And the Marseille fans did this probably about 3 weeks ago, stormed the training ground and set on fire. So other fans will think, right, what we do? You see the Green Brigade going up to Lennoxtown with banners. Now, I think they're clever enough, and I think most fans would be clever enough to think, why would we? It's just going to cost our club money by setting the training ground on fire. It's going to cost us thousands. But the Ipswich fans have done it, and I think it's a trend. They just look at other fans and think, right, that looks okay. We'll try and get the manager sacked. We'll set the training ground on fire.
Yeah, I just think it's ridiculous, by the way. And they're only 5 points off the playoffs, Roughie.
Yeah, wait till you're at a club where you're training and somebody chases you with a machete. Unfortunately, they picked the wrong guy to chase.
Hey, Peter, it probably doesn't help that Lambo was Norwich manager. I think that would probably go against them as well.
Yeah, well, I like Paula.
Listen, no, I'm not saying. Obviously, I played with Lambo Celtic in Scotland, but I'm just saying, go to your rivals and you start losing games. It's easy for them to turn round. He was at Norwich.
The most pathetic fans demonstration I ever saw, Peter. It was a solo demonstration, if you like. Motherwell at home to St Mirren. Motherwell had gone 2-0 up. It was a bit of a relegation battle. St Mirren came back and beat us 3-2. Maurice Malpass was the manager, and a Motherwell fan sitting in front of me threw his season ticket onto the pitch in what was our last home game of the season.
Yeah, now that's sensible thinking. Absolutely. Listen, that's the nature of the game, but I think it's at times become more vitriolic. I don't want to go back over the whole point of view on social media. We talk about it quite regularly on this show, some of the behaviour of certain individuals and a collective as well. The only saving grace that I think, and it's a real bonus, is while it is a fantastic invention and it employs millions upon millions of people, there will be coming up in the future, whether it's 2, 5 or 10 years time, there will be a policing of it and there will be consequences for some of the unsavoury behaviour that goes on. And I think that's coming very shortly. If not for the actual social media companies, I think we'll also get to the point where individuals will be tagged on this as well. I can't wait for that to happen. And with that in mind, the flip side of that is Davy Moyes, 3-0 against Sheffield United. You know, they've got a real opportunity to get into a Champions League position with a team that last year escaped relegation. This was a guy who wasn't deemed good enough for the West Ham job first time around.
Yeah, absolutely. And me, Peter, I don't have the same expertise when it comes to English football as yourself, obviously, but I'm very old-fashioned in the respect that I like to keep an eye on anybody who is Scottish in that league. And ever since, I think Davy Moyes never got a chance and was never likely to get a fair crack at the whip at Man United, then I've kind of been willing him well. Ever since then, and hoping that the guy gets a wee turn. I've only had dealings with him once, many moons ago, when he was on the radio waves, and he seemed to me like a perfectly decent guy who had been a jobbing professional footballer back in the day. I think he was in admission he wasn't anything great, but he wasn't bad. And I just think the Man United thing, I thought that could have finished him in football. I mean, it was a big job getting straight in after Sir Alex, of course, everybody knows that, but wow, the abuse he took at the time, it was absolutely awful. So good on Davy Moyes, absolutely chuffed for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight, obviously, we're going to get the insight from Roughie and Darren and Tam on what they're going to be watching tonight. But of course, if you like football at the business end of the Champions League, here's what's on offer.
The Champions League last 16 returns today, so let's have a look at the 5 things to look out for. 5. Who will be the dark horses? Last year we saw RB Leipzig reach the semi-finals, but who will be the surprise package this time round? Lazio impressed in the group stage, whilst Dortmund have a crop of exciting youngsters. You can never discount Atalanta either, whilst Leipzig will aim to go deep again after knocking out Man United. 4. Struggling Liverpool and Chelsea? These two sides have had it tough domestically, and one is likely to miss out on the top 4, so winning the competition could be the best way to enter next year's tournament. The Reds have collapsed defensively recently, but they always impress in Europe. Will they do so against the exciting Leipzig on Tuesday? Thomas Tuchel was the runner-up last year with Paris Saint-Germain and has rejuvenated the Blues, but they face a tough task against La Liga leaders Atletico Madrid, who are spearheaded by a rejuvenated Luis Suarez. 3. Resurgent Ronaldo and Messi? Neither of the game's two greats have been in the final since 2018, having featured in the previous 5. Juventus are finding form under rookie coach Andrea Pirlo, but are far from the finished article, although Cristiano Ronaldo will have something to say about that. Lionel Messi is red hot right now and is the focal point of a new Barcelona under Ronald Koeman, but will his magic be enough to see them past PSG? 2. Man City's time to shine? Pep Guardiola's men crashed out last season against Lyon in the quarter-finals, and they always trip themselves up in Europe's Premier competition. But could this year be different? City have looked irresistible in the league and have a new defensive solidity not seen before that could inspire them to the prize that has so far eluded the club. They faced Borussia Mönchengladbach in the last 16. 1. Bayern the unbeatable? Bayern Munich became only the second team in history to win all 6 trophies possible within 12 months as they continued their dominance at the Club World Cup. They've not been their ruthless best this season, but under Hansi Flick, they've still lifted more pieces of silverware than they've lost games. Leroy Sané has added firepower to Robert Lewandowski's supporting cast, so can anyone stop the free-scoring Bavarian Giants?
Yeah, good insight there from our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi. To be perfectly honest with you though, Darren, I'm looking at that. Man City, is this their time? They've only spent $1 billion trying to get that trophy.
I would like it, Peter. I'm a big Pep fan. I think he's unbelievable the way his team's playing, the way they've come back this year. And you're looking at John Stones, and now there's no doubt he makes players. He's made Raheem Sterling. He makes players better by making the.
I think that was a Man City fan, Roughie, that cut me off there as soon as I said he'd spent $1 billion. Yeah, as soon as he said I'd spent $1 billion, that was it, boom. But they have spent $1 billion, Roughie. I mean, the players that they brought in to try and achieve that goal is outrageous.
Yeah, it's the quest, isn't it? It's Pep's quest. There's no doubt about that. Every time they get knocked out, you can see it's hurting. I think he wants to be up there with the big ones. All the big managers have that trophy under their belt, and he wants to be up there with them. They've been impressive in English, there's no doubt about that. I just think some of the quality in Europe are a wee bit better than some of the English clubs this year. So I think they'll get by this round, but I think there are other teams that Gabriel mentioned there will make it a lot more difficult for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, Roughie. I should be watching Leipzig-Liverpool tonight. I'm absolutely looking at it as a huge Liverpool fan as well. But I just cannot help but think Barcelona against PSG. I think I might be swayed towards that. Darren, where's your eyes going to be watching?
I think I've got to go with Barcelona PSG as well. I would like to watch Liverpool as well, Peter. Obviously interested with Andy Robertson there. But I think you need to watch the two big hitters. So it'll be Barca PSG for me.
Yep, I'm in your camp on that. Tam?
Well, I think I'm looking at the TV schedules for tonight. Australian Wilderness with Ray Mears. Now, they're always great programmes, right? You know, when he's going through all the desolate wasteland and through the jungles and the desert. And it is a repeat, though. That's the only thing. These are all repeats now because Ray Mears, for his Christmas there, somebody got him a lighter. So doesn't need to make any new programmes. That's it.
You're a bad person.
That's it. Doesn't need to rub two sticks together or anything. Nothing in the programmes now. No, incidentally, Roughie's, I'm assuming one of your ultimate pin-ups, she's on the night as well, Roughie. Joanna Lumley. She's on STV at 8 o'clock. Our new series. Wow. That's got to be. I would have thought so. No, Peter, I think I'm like Darren. You know, I don't have a great interest in the European football when there's no Scottish teams involved. That's why I'm really looking forward to Thursday night, Royal Antwerp against Rangers, getting a Scottish team back in there. Alas, might be a long, long time before we have a Scottish team in this stage of the Champions League. But Barcelona, PSG, I mean, surely we've got to see a class actor too if you tune into that game. So I'll watch that tonight with a wee glass of wine.
Yeah, and I think it's a great line that Mark Vinicum has just sent us a message, and he says, Peter is the reason you're not going to watch RB Leipzig because Liverpool might get pumped again. And Mark, that is the main reason, because I think they will lose that game to Leipzig. But Barcelona against PSG is absolutely special. If I was picking a European club that I absolutely, if I won the lottery, Roughie, and this is probably our best way to talk about this before we go. If I won the lottery, Roughie, I would genuinely. I think I'd have a season ticket for Liverpool and a season ticket at Barcelona. That would be good going, wouldn't it? You could nip off, see Liverpool, then out to Barcelona. We jaunt down La Ramblas and then watch football of a high standard. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. You've not actually told us how much you've won so far. So I'm just wondering if you're really throwing everything out the pram here. What are you winning? I mean, you just won 20 grand or something.
No. If I win the lottery big, I am telling you right now, Cowan, Jackson, yourself, the entire team, we're all going to Barbados. We're going to have the best couple of weeks ever. And then, obviously, I'll pay for all medical bills to bring you all back round. and then after that, Roughie, obviously, I'll pay for Joanna Lumley's flights as well. And then it's just a case of...
I've said it before, if I win lots I'm talking about a big score in the lottery, I will make Partick Thistle a Champions League team.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you are. That's not a bad shout, Tam. Considering Man City have spent $1 billion and haven't won it, it's going to have to be one hell of a Champions League win in the lottery.
But as you know, we've got a top manager who could cream. He'll identify the players to get us there.
Absolutely. He's a regular on Tam's show. Brilliant. Anyway, apart from anything else, pick the game you love. We'll dissect it tomorrow and we'll talk about Rangers. We'll hear from Stephen Gerrard tomorrow ahead of that match against Royal Antwerp, where, as Tam mentioned, great to see a Scottish club keeps the interest and we want to see them do well as well. So with that in mind, coming up shortly, I'll give you details of that fantastic competition. We've got a hat-trick competition sponsored by Arnold Clark and a great chance for you to win yourself an iPad, a Diego Maradona canvas and also an Xbox as well. And as Tam mentioned there, these days, there's no such a thing as being bored. As my mum used to say, Tam, only boring people get bored. And that's when we only had a bike and a ball and there was no computers. So you made a very good point there. Incidentally, tomorrow morning coming out, we have the one-to-one with Kevin Twaddle. If you want to be inspired, want to be uplifted by a story, not only of coming back from gambling addiction, but over the last year, I don't know what possessed me. I looked at his social media. I've known him for a long, long while. I just sent him a wee message and thought, we'll have a natter. on the programme. I'm glad I did. If you know people who are maybe having a tough time, pick up the phone to them, send them a wee message, and then you get to hear a story that Kevin will tell tomorrow, which I think just puts life in perspective. We're talking about football. It's only a game. Listen to Kevin twaddle on our podcast tomorrow, and I think you will enjoy what he has to say, and of course be supportive of people who are having a tough time. From Darren Jackson, Alan Rough, Tam Cowan, and myself, Peter Martin, I will say cheerio to you on the basis that in the next couple of minutes off air, we're about to find out some off-air stories from Tam on the name of the person who lost 10 grand. I can't wait. Thank you everyone for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.